Stop scrolling. Don't move. Look at your phone. Look at that blank screen. Feel that pressure in your chest. That quiet anxiety building because she hasn't replied. Because something shifted and you didn't feel it happen. 1 minute everything was normal. The next minute, silence. And now your mind is racing, replaying every message, every word, trying to fix something that might not even be broken. Let me tell you the truth most men never hear. The dynamic didn't randomly change. It changed because you weren't leading it. You were taught that if you are kind enough, available enough, supportive enough, she will choose you. You were taught that love is earned through effort. That if you give your heart gently, she is obligated to hold it carefully. But look at reality. The men who overgive get overlooked. The ones who are always there become background noise. The ones who would do anything are respected the least. That's not coincidence. That's psychology. If you want real truth about power, attraction, and human nature, subscribe right now. Because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been programmed to believe. And if you stay with me until the end, you will never approach relationships the same way again. Desire is not built on safety. It's built on tension. Respect is not built on devotion. It's built on strength. And strength begins with your frame. Not your money, not your looks, your frame. The invisible structure that determines whether you lead or follow. For the next 20 minutes, we are dismantling illusions. We are applying cold strategy to emotional chaos. I'm giving you psychological shifts that will make manipulation almost impossible. But understand this, once you see these mechanics, you can't unsee them. You will start noticing patterns everywhere. Tests, power plays, subtle shifts, and you'll realize how often you are surrendering leverage without knowing it. Let's begin with something simple and brutal. Scarcity creates value, always. Air is free. You don't think about it, but hold your breath for 30 seconds underwater and oxygen becomes priceless. Right now, you are free air. Unlimited, immediate, predictable. You text back instantly. You cancel plans. You rearrange your schedule. You think that proves devotion. Psychologically, it signals low value. When you are constantly present, you eliminate imagination, and imagination is the most addictive force in attraction. When you're not there, her mind fills in the gaps. What's he doing? Who's he with? Why isn't he reacting? That uncertainty builds curiosity. Curiosity builds emotional investment. This is not about playing games. It's about having purpose when you are genuinely building something. Your body, your business, your discipline. Your absence becomes natural. There's a difference between pretending to be busy and actually having direction. Women feel that difference immediately. The old version of you panicked when she took hours to reply. You double-texted, you checked her status. You let silence control your mood. The evolved version puts the phone down and returns to work. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but because your life doesn't pause for anyone. Humans chase what retreats, not because they're cruel, because tension activates instinct. If you constantly move toward her, she instinctively moves back to restore balance. Stop chasing. Stand firm in your direction. Focus forward. Let her decide whether to follow. Write this in your mind. My absence has weight. Now let's go deeper. The brain loves patterns, but it gets bored by certainty. If every interaction with you feels identical, you become predictable, and predictability kills intensity. Imagine a machine that paid you every time you pressed a button. You would press it, collect your reward, and walk away. But when rewards are random, your brain becomes hooked. It leans in. It pays attention. This is called intermittent reinforcement. It's one of the strongest psychological hooks known. Most men are predictable in the worst way. Predictably nice. Predictably reactive. Predictably insecure. She knows exactly how to trigger reassurance. Exactly how to get an apology. Exactly how to pull validation. You become easy to manage. Instead, develop emotional range. If you are usually calm, occasionally show passion. If you are usually expressive, sometimes become reserved, not out of cruelty, but to remind her that your energy is not automatic. Your attention is not a salary. It's earned. When she cannot predict your reaction, she has to focus. She studies you. She becomes aware, and awareness creates investment. Most men mirror her emotions. If she's distant, they panic. If she's warm, they relax. You're letting her weather control your climate. Stop doing that. Become your own atmosphere. Calm when she's chaotic. Focused when she's distracted. Steady when she's testing. The moment she starts wondering what you're thinking, the power dynamic shifts. When a woman starts asking herself, "What is he thinking?" the balance tilts. Not because you said something clever, not because you played a trick, but because you stopped reacting on impulse. And that's where real power begins, not in controlling her, but in mastering yourself. Let's talk about validation. Every human being, no matter how confident they appear, wants to feel seen, understood, significant. And most men completely misunderstand this. They try to impress. They list achievements. They talk about money, status, the gym, their hustle. They think attraction is built by proving worth. But when you oversell yourself, you silently communicate insecurity. You're asking for approval instead of assuming it. The shift is simple, but dangerous. You become the observer instead of the performer. Instead of talking about yourself, you study her, not casually, intentionally. You ask questions other men don't ask, not surface-level small talk, not, "What do you do for fun?" You ask, "Why do you think you're drawn to chaos?" You ask, "What are you afraid people would discover about you?" You listen for patterns. You notice contradictions. You pay attention to the gap between what she says and what she feels. When you reflect someone's hidden self back to them, it creates intensity. It feels rare. It feels intimate. She thinks, "No one has ever understood me like this." But here's the part most men miss. You control the mirror. You decide when to hold it up, and you decide when to lower it. Deep validation creates attachment. Withdrawal of validation creates pursuit. This doesn't mean fake interest. It means disciplined attention. You don't flatter her beauty. Every man does that. You acknowledge her resilience. You notice her ambition. You call out her defense mechanisms calmly. You make her feel seen beyond the mask. That's psychological intimacy, and intimacy creates gravity. But be careful. If you give endless validation without standards, you lose leverage. You become emotional supply. The key is balance. Give insight, then step back. Let her lean in to earn more. Now let's confront something uncomfortable. The pedestal. You were programmed to worship. Movies told you she's an angel. Social media tells you she's a goddess. Society told you to treat her like royalty. And without realizing it, you placed her above you. Think about what happens when you treat someone like a celebrity. You become the fan. Fans don't lead. Fans wait in line. Fans hope for attention. And hope is weak positioning. She is human. She has flaws. She has insecurities. She makes mistakes. The moment you see her clearly instead of idealizing her, your behavior changes. Your tone shifts. Your posture shifts. You stop seeking approval and start evaluating compatibility. Women date across or up in perceived value. When you act like she's out of your league, you confirm it. When you act like an equal, or better, you reset the frame. Destroy the pedestal internally first. Stop over-laughing at jokes that aren't funny. Stop agreeing with opinions you don't respect. Stop apologizing for preferences. Disagreement, delivered calmly, builds tension. Challenge builds spark. When you say, "I don't agree with that," without hostility, it signals confidence. Respect is not built by compliance. It's built by boundaries. She cannot admire a man she can control. She cannot feel secure with a man who bends under pressure. When you tease her lightly, when you call out behavior playfully, when you hold eye contact instead of looking away, you communicate something nonverbal. I am not intimidated. Shift your internal question from, "Does she like me?" to, "Is she aligned with me?" That subtle mental switch changes everything, because now you are selecting, not auditioning. And here's where most men fail again. They talk too much. Over-explaining kills mystery. When you write paragraphs defending your intentions, you drain authority. When you argue emotionally, you lower your ground. Silence is stronger than justification. In negotiation, the person who fills the silence loses. In arguments, the one who shouts first loses. In attraction, the one who over-explains loses. Master the pause. When she tests you, don't rush to answer. Wait 3 seconds. Look at her, then speak slowly. That gap creates weight. It disrupts autopilot. It shows control. Mystery cannot exist when everything is explained. Leave space. Let her wonder. Silence is uncomfortable for most men. That's why it's powerful. The moment a conversation goes quiet, you rush to fill it. You explain. You justify. You soften your stance. You think you're preventing misunderstanding. In reality, you're leaking authority. The man who is comfortable in silence signals control. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He doesn't scramble to fix every emotional ripple. When she throws a subtle test your way, a sarcastic comment, a delayed reply, a cold tone, the average man reacts instantly. He defends himself. He tries to win her back. But when you pause, when you simply observe, the tension shifts back to her. Silence forces reflection. If you don't chase clarity, she begins to question her own behavior. If you don't overreact, she loses the emotional lever. Most dynamics fall apart because the man cannot tolerate uncertainty. He needs constant proof, constant warmth, constant response. That need is visible, and visible need lowers perceived value. You must become comfortable not knowing, comfortable not reacting, comfortable letting moments breathe. Now we move to something even more powerful: boundaries. A boundary is not a speech. It's not a paragraph text explaining what you deserve. It's behavior. If she disrespects you and you continue rewarding her with attention, you have no boundary. If she cancels repeatedly and you keep rescheduling eagerly, you have no boundary. Words mean nothing without enforcement. The strongest signal you can ever send is calm withdrawal. Not dramatic, not emotional, just measured distance. When disrespect meets consequences, behavior changes. When disrespect meets negotiation, it repeats. This is where most men fail because they are afraid of loss. They think if they enforce standards, she will leave. So they tolerate small violations, then bigger ones. Then resentment builds quietly. And by the time they finally speak up, The frame is already broken. You only keep what you are willing to lose. Read that again. If you cling, you signal dependency. If you demonstrate independence, you signal strength. And strength creates security. Paradoxically, the more you show that your world continues without her, the safer she feels stepping into it. Now let's address the nuclear principle, the willingness to walk away. This cannot be faked. Women sense bluffs instantly. If you threaten to leave but your entire emotional stability depends on her staying, she knows. Your tone will betray you. Your eyes will betray you. Your hesitation will betray you. True power begins when your life is full without her, when your mission excites you more than her attention, when your discipline matters more than her validation, when your schedule doesn't collapse around her mood. If she senses that losing her would devastate you, she unconsciously holds leverage. If she senses that you value her but do not need her, the dynamic changes. Neediness is heavy. Independence is magnetic. And here's the truth that may challenge you. This isn't about controlling women. It's about removing the parts of you that can be controlled. Your fear of loneliness, your addiction to validation, your impulse to chase, your habit of over-explaining. When those impulses die, your presence becomes grounded, and grounded energy feels stable. Stable feels strong. Strong feels safe. Most men try to control outcomes. High-value men control themselves. When you no longer react automatically, you become unpredictable in the best way. When you no longer beg for reassurance, you become calm under pressure. When you no longer panic at silence, you become the center of gravity in the interaction. Gravity doesn't chase, it pulls. Now zoom out for a second. You clicked this video because you wanted influence, maybe even control. But notice something. Every principle we've discussed so far, scarcity, unpredictability, validation, discipline, destroying the pedestal, silence, boundaries, they all require self-control. This is the twist. You cannot control another human being. You can only control your responses. And when your responses are disciplined, consistent, and grounded, people adjust around you. The reason your past dynamics failed wasn't because you weren't good enough. It's because you were emotionally reactive. You let impulses dictate behavior. You let fear guide decisions. Kill the version of you that seeks approval at any cost. Replace him with the version that chooses alignment over attention. Let's go deeper into power dynamics. The quiet forces shaping every interaction you have. Most men think attraction is about looks or status. They obsess over gym gains, clothes, money, followers. Those things help, but they are not the core. The core is perception, how she perceives your control over yourself. If you react emotionally to small triggers, she registers instability. If you stay calm when challenged, she registers strength. If you argue to win approval, she registers insecurity. If you speak slowly and stand firm in your position, she registers authority. Authority is not loud, it is grounded. Now understand something important about human behavior. People test what they are unsure about. If she feels secure in your strength, she won't test often. If she senses cracks in your confidence, she will push boundaries to see how far they go. Tests come in subtle forms, delayed responses, slight disrespect disguised as humor, comparisons to other men, small demands that stretch your limits. These aren't accidents, they are measurements. When tested, the average man reacts defensively. He explains himself, he overcompensates, he tries to prove worth. That reaction confirms insecurity. The strategic man responds differently. He pauses. He evaluates the intention behind the test. Sometimes he ignores it. Sometimes he corrects it calmly. Sometimes he laughs and redirects the frame. You do not fight every challenge. You choose which battles reinforce your boundaries. Another powerful principle, emotional investment, follows effort. If she invests time, energy, vulnerability, or loyalty into you, her attachment increases naturally. If you do all the investing, the dynamic becomes unbalanced. The person who invests more often cares more. So instead of chasing connection aggressively, create space for her to contribute. Let her plan sometimes. Let her initiate sometimes. Let her express interest without you pulling it out of her constantly. When she participates in building the connection, she feels ownership over it. Ownership creates attachment. But remember, balance is key. You are not withdrawing effort to manipulate. You are creating equality in contribution. Now let's talk about one of the most dangerous traps men fall into. Emotional dependency disguised as love. You might think constant texting equals affection. You might think checking in repeatedly equals care. You might think jealousy equals passion. But often those behaviors come from fear of losing control. Real love doesn't panic at distance. It doesn't demand constant reassurance. It trusts strength. If your mood depends entirely on her response time, you are handing her control over your emotional state. That's dangerous. Instead, build multiple pillars in your life: career, fitness, friends, purpose, growth. When your identity is supported by many pillars, one relationship cannot collapse your world. She should enhance your life, not become it. When you are complete alone, you enter relationships from choice, not desperation. And choice feels powerful. Here's something most people never realize. Calm confidence creates attraction faster than performance ever will. You don't need flashy gestures. You need consistency. You don't need dramatic speeches. You need steady behavior. Show up the same way regardless of her mood. Respect yourself regardless of her opinion. Move forward regardless of her attention. That stability becomes your signature. When she experiences emotional safety combined with quiet strength, she relaxes. And when she relaxes, deeper connection becomes possible. Power isn't about dominating her emotions. It's about mastering your own. We've reached the final shift. And this is where everything connects. By now you understand scarcity, unpredictability, validation control, boundaries, silence, and the power of walking away. But if you miss this last principle, none of it truly works. The real foundation of power in relationships is self-respect. Not ego, not arrogance, not pretending to be untouchable. Real self-respect. The kind that makes your standards non-negotiable and your behavior consistent. If you tolerate disrespect once, it becomes a pattern. If you reward bad behavior with attention, it repeats. If you ignore your own discomfort to keep someone around, you slowly train people to ignore your limits. Respect is taught through consistency. You don't announce your boundaries loudly, you live them quietly. When something crosses your line, you respond calmly, and you adjust access accordingly. No drama, no emotional explosions, just clear consequences. That clarity is powerful. Now let's talk about identity. Most men make a dangerous mistake. They define themselves by who they're with. Their confidence rises when she responds positively. Their confidence drops when she pulls back. Their mood mirrors her behavior. That creates instability. The strongest position you can build is this: I am complete on my own. If you add value to my life, welcome. If you subtract peace from my life, the door is open. When you operate from that mindset, you stop chasing validation. You start evaluating alignment. And something interesting happens. Women feel when a man is centered like that. They sense when his happiness is not dependent on them. That energy creates respect automatically. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Another key truth: attraction fades when effort stops. From both sides. If she stops investing, withdraw attention slightly and observe. If she steps up, the balance restores. If she continues pulling away, you have your answer. You don't need arguments. You need behavior patterns. Pay attention to actions, not words. Words are cheap. Promises are easy. Consistent behavior is real evidence. Now here's a final mindset shift. Stop asking, how do I control her? Start asking, how do I control myself under pressure? Because the moment you master your reactions, you control the interaction. When she tests you, you stay calm. When she pulls away, you focus forward. When she challenges your authority, you respond with composure. When she respects your boundaries, you reward it with presence. That consistency builds a reputation around you. And reputation shapes treatment. Remember this clearly. Power is not shouting louder. Power is remaining steady while everything around you tries to destabilize you. If you truly internalize these principles, something changes inside you. You stop feeling like you need to impress. You stop performing for approval. You start moving with quiet certainty. You become the man who chooses. And when a man chooses instead of begs, the entire dynamic transforms. This is the final message. Build your kingdom. Build your discipline. Build your purpose. If someone wants to stand beside you, they must respect the structure you've created. You lead by example. You lead by control over self. You lead by action. If this mindset resonated with you, comment, I choose power. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because we're going deeper into strategy, psychology, and personal dominance in the next one.